It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change your attitude, change your life. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. You're listening to us in your neighborhood, from coast to coast, and around the world. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joan Herman, author, speaker, and your host. For 4 years, Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life has been bringing you interviews with some of the most inspirational and influential people in the world. It's our goal to educate and empower you so you can live your best life now. Thanks for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. We have another great show for you today. Joining me is Robert Thurman, co-author of the book, Love Your Enemies, How to Break the Anger Habit and Be a Whole Lot Happier. Robert is here to explain how to identify our enemies and transform relationships with them, breaking free from the us versus them thinking. Robert is a recognized authority on religion and spirituality, philosophy, and Tibetan Buddhism. He's been a personal friend of the Dalai Lama for more than 40 years and was named one of Time magazine's 25 most influential Americans. Robert's been profiled by the New York Times and People magazine. Welcome, Robert. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, well, thank you, Joan. It's very nice to be with you.
Robert, the title of your book, Learning to Love Your Enemies, that's a challenge sometimes. I mean, hate can really build up in us and rob us of our peace and happiness. It's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. So do you actually mean, well, I love that. I mean, it is. It's the way so many of us live our lives. So
yeah.
Do you actually mean that there's a way for us to love our enemies?
Yes, absolutely. It's very rational to love your enemies. The reason that we picked this title, which of course is very famous from Jesus' famous expression in the Matthew, in the Sermon on the Mount, is that Buddhist psychology will support the practicality of Jesus' statements. I think all too often people think Jesus' statement is something for a saint and that ordinary people can't do that and therefore we don't need to try and it's something impractical, you know. Love means to wish the happiness of someone, you know, of the beloved. That's the way the word is defined, the Sanskrit word for love, maitri. It means you want the beloved to be happy, right? So if your enemy is happy, then they're not going to bother to be your enemy. Why are they going to run around harming you? You know, happy people don't usually harm other people because they're having too good a time to be bothered with it. So loving the enemy, meaning wishing the enemy to be happy, is actually the best way of getting rid of the enemy in the most practical sense. Now, that doesn't mean that we're unaware of the difficulties psychologically, and because we tend to feel fear, we think someone's going to hurt us. They have hurt us perhaps in the past, they've insulted us, or they've done something bad. And so then we feel that aggression and anger, which will lead to hatred, will be a best defense. But, you know, like in Kung Fu, you know, like martial arts, the best Kung Fu artists are the ones who can defend themselves and can take the aggression of the enemy and turn it back on itself and remain peaceful and calm themselves, you know. I liked your expression. You said drinking poison and expecting somebody else to die. Anger and hate make the hater and the angry person feel totally awful. And then they want to vent that feeling of awfulness, and they think that by shouting at someone or striking them or doing something nasty to them, then they'll feel better. But actually, they then feel worse, and not only that, the other person will respond, and they'll have more stress in the future. So we think there's really no question, but it's more practical to love your enemies.
Now, Robert, we're talking about enemies, and in your book, you discuss 4 kinds of enemies that we encounter in our life.
Right.
Let's go through these 4. Let's start with the outer enemy. What is this, and how does that type of enemy impact us?
Right. Well, the outer enemy is the one we've just been talking about that we have to love, in the sense that the outer enemy is the person who injures us, or has harmed us, and has injured us. Because, of course, we spend a lot of time hating someone who's already gone, even in the past, you know, in history. And it doesn't do anybody any good, and it makes us feel sick. So the outer enemy are the people who harm us or who could be harmful. hating them is a second harm. It adds injury to insult in the sense that we get more upset a second time by being angry at the person who hurt us and we had pain from. Actually, there are many studies that prove that when you lose your temper, your judgment about what you're doing and how you're impacting the situation is worsened enormously. You narrow your focus. You often hurt yourself instead of the other person, or you overdo whatever you do. And so you're much better when you're calm. You make much better judgments and you act more effectively. So the idea is to deal with a inimical situation before you get angry at it and before you hate the person. That's the key.
And what is the next enemy?
The next enemy is the inner enemy, and that's what we call it. And the inner enemy is where your own anger, actually, and your own tendency to be carried away by your emotions. And that's an inner enemy because when you are carried away by them, you can't function effectively. And you become, in a way, your delicate, soft, and vulnerable human body becomes the tool of an emotion that thinks that it's all powerful. To conquer the inner enemy, one uses the self-awareness techniques and sort of cognitive science techniques and meditational techniques to observe the way your mind works and see where the triggers are in your mind. If you learn to watch how the mind works and how those deeper thoughts arise, you can sort of say, well, wait, why do I have to have my button pressed? Or why does that have to remind me of this other thing? Or this is a very different situation, or that's not going to help. In other words, you begin to get more control over the inner mental processes, and you thereby are able to immunize yourself a little bit about being overwhelmed by your own emotions and thereby rendered ineffective or self-defeating in action situations. And as well as self-defeating in when you're just by yourself, where your mind is brooding and with resentment and seething with frustration and so forth.
What is the third enemy that you talk about?
Okay, the third enemy is what we call the secret enemy. The secret enemy, we're getting down then to kind of deep structural level in the mind, and that has to do with the attitude about the self that we all have, and this is sort of one of the deepest visions and insights coming from the Asian Freud, if you will, or Winnicott, which I'll call Buddha, because Shakyamuni Buddha, because he really was a great psychologist, not really a prophet or sort of religion founder, although that's the way he's misunderstood, I think, in the world. But he was a great psychologist, and he found that we have in our minds, we human beings have in our minds, a false construct about what our self is. And we think, like when you look at a picture of yourself years ago in a scene, a snapshot of yourself at a family picnic or something, you look in your scrapbook and you see yourself with a really completely different body. Every cell in your body is different, and it's been like 40 years or 20 years in your case, I'm sure you're much younger, of experience, 15 years of experience since then. And yet when you sort of inhabit yourself in the memory of the picture that the picture evokes, you think you're just the same subjectivity, the same person that you are now, that you haven't changed at all. We have this sense that there's this unchanging point of self that's always the same. And of course, we know logically that isn't so. And then now we've had a lot of life experience and different things have happened and we're a completely different person. But still there's this idea that we're always the same. And this is circles around a deep structural thing, that there's a sort of unchanging, rigid, fixed identity, personal identity that we have that never changes. And therefore, it's hard for us to change. And we have sort of preconceived ideas about ourselves. And there's a point in ourselves where we're kind of unaffected by things and we don't feel connected to things. And sometimes that can manifest as us behaving in an inappropriate way in relationships. And sometimes when we're all alone, it manifests as a kind of sense of isolation and loneliness and depression, etc. But the deeper underlying thing that is some sort of absolute fixed identity thing. And this is called in Buddhist psychology the identity habit or the fixated identity habit. And to get at that, we have to practice a kind of awareness that pushes on from the mindfulness of how the thoughts work in the mind, going into the deeper structure of the mind and how we feel kind of almost imprisoned into an unchanging self, meaning that we're always going to be the same. We have an unchanging attitude. And the other area where that's really good to getting after the secret enemy is once one has such a rigid identity structure and sort of stuck in it, then things like sexism, males who think females are inferior, or racism, people who think members members of other races are inferior, or religious intolerance and fanaticism, thinking that people of other worldviews, etc., are inferior. Those fixed attitudes are sort of hook up to that sense of fixed identity, and it's hard to overcome those and see the virtues of the others and realize that different beings are different, but they are not necessarily inferior to each other, and developing a more open acceptance of other people from other traditions, other races, other nations, other genders. This is very helped by dealing with that deep secret enemy.
Well, Robert, and it sounds to me what you're describing as part of the secret enemy, that really leads into the fourth one and final one, which is the super secret enemy, and that's that deep-seated self-loathing. Is that a correct assessment?
That is very correct, I love your name of your program, boy, to change your attitude, change your life, and be happier. That is so great. That's just really what we're about. And it's so important in the world today because there's so much, people are writing op-eds and articles now about how there's so much anger in the society, so much polarization. And a lot of that has to do with this rigidity and fixation of habit. And the self-loathing one, of course, is the sort of at the bottommost level. And it's super secret because it's very hidden from people, because people who are egotistical under the secret enemy of the rigid self-identity habit, they tend to think, well, I'm so great, I'm an American, or I'm a Republican, or I'm a Democrat, or I'm a liberal, or I'm a conservative, or whatever it is that they think, or I'm a man, or I'm a woman, or I'm a this or that, and they actually therefore don't feel good, and they feel ill at ease in the world, and they're angry, and they need to buy another 5 guns, and they need to hide or move away from some other people, and when they see someone in the street who's different, they get all upset, and so therefore they're unhappy all the time. And then this builds up the super secret enemy, which is something in our culture, I think. Down there in the super secret thing is this idea that we have, which relates, of course, it underlies and reinforces the secret enemy that we're fixed and can't change. And this sort of it gives us a feeling of powerlessness and worthlessness. And of course we can't change. We're so helpless and so worthless, and we're just somebody else has to help us. And this makes us very dependent on some kind of fantasies of authority. We think someone else will save us and so forth, even though all the religious scriptures in the world, the great leaders of them tell people you have to help yourself. God helps those who help themselves and who does good themselves, and not just, you can't just be evil and do every bad thing saying, I can't help myself, and then somebody else has to come and save you. So that super secret enemy is very important to dig out. And in working on that, we try to encourage people with what we call the very preciousness of human life, the miracle of being a human being, of having the amazing intelligence that we have, of having the good heart, kindness, and compassion that we have, of being, mammals who are cared for by loving mothers and who are helpless for years when we're little and depend completely on other people's kindness, and therefore kindness is sort of integral to our makeup, and we can be loving, and we can be happy, and we can change if some habit that is bothering us, and we can help our situation. So this is sort of the area that we get into with dealing with the super secret enemy.
So Robert, how does empathy fit into loving our enemies?
Well, empathy is a very great skill that we all have, every human being does, which means to imaginatively feel the feelings of another being. Like the old proverb, like put yourself in the other fellow's shoes. You have that kind of statement, or see things from the other's perspective, when people are having a debate or an argument or a struggle of some kind. And empathy is simply the skill to how to do that. And it's how we read the reactions of others, how we feel how they must feel, how we see how they look. And once we do that, then we begin to realize that we can then see how we interact with them in a different light. And we can interact with them more effectively and more helpfully and less irritatingly and harmfully. And we can generally improve our network of relations, and we can have really true friendships, and we can have really rewarding love relationships by feeling what others feel. A great leader, for example, people talk a lot about leadership, and some people wrongly think leadership means you just charge ahead and don't pay any attention to anybody else, but actually not. A great leader is someone who can see how others are and what their perspective is, and therefore can set an example for them in an appropriate way that will actually inspire them, can also know which one is capable of what and who can delegate what task to, so they can get people the best from people, get people to give their best and so forth. So great leadership, actually, and management of people in business or family or relationships is, of course, comes from the skill of empathy, of feeling how they feel and seeing how they are.
I think everything you're saying is so relevant, and it's such a key, because it is difficult to maintain that anger when you really see where someone else is coming from. Everyone is on their own journey, and most have a cross to bear. And when you really try to put yourself in their shoes and see where they're coming from, it is very difficult to maintain that angry, reactive state. So I think that you are right on the money with that. And
that's great, Joan. You put it so well. That's wonderful, this show that you do. It really is.
The book is Love Your Enemies, How to Break the Anger Habit and Be a Whole Lot Happier. Robert, thank you so much for spending time with us today. It was really an honor for me to have you here.
Well, thank you, Joan. It's my honor to be with you, and I wish you all the best of luck for CYA, CYL. I think it's a neat, I even like the acronym, CIASO. I like it. It makes me happy to just pronounce it. And take care and good luck, okay?
This is Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. We'll be right back. It's time for this week's Medical Minutes, and joining me today is Dr. Michael Magwood, a family chiropractor specializing in pediatric and pregnancy care. Dr. Magwood is from the Pure Balance Center in Clifton, New Jersey. Welcome, Dr. Magwood. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Dr. Magwood, chiropractic care, I think it's one of the most misunderstood modalities in medicine, and I'm not sure if people really understand the benefits that can be derived from a visit to a chiropractor. So tell us a little bit about what is chiropractic care?
Well, I think in every aspect of healing arts, education is as important as the treatment itself. Chiropractic is a healing art, science, and philosophy that incorporates aligning the spinal column in order to move well and allow the expression of nerve function.
Now, how important is chiropractic care to our life? Is it something that we should be doing preventatively, or is it something that we do when there's a problem? I think most people think about visiting the chiropractor when their back hurts, but should we be doing an annual physical with a chiropractor?
That's a great question. The reality is that most people come into practice because something hurts. And our education system is leading people to choices to find wellness whether or not they hurt. And in specializing in pediatrics, that's when moms who have come in with hurts or aches or pains, they say, wait a minute, if I hurt now and I've spent years creating this hurt, wouldn't it be better to have my children get checked prior to having stresses and neglects and abuse to their body?
So it's important for us to get a regular annual chiropractic checkup? Well,
the reality is the most common care plan that we have is people come in and get checked somewhere between once a week and once a month.
Now, that's if there's a problem, or is that if they just want to maintain wellness and balance?
A wellness program falls within that range. Sometimes people are coming every day if they're going through an intensity.
So someone will come in and they'll get a checkup, and you'll do an evaluation of what's going on within their body, and then you create a plan of action. And as you're saying, sometimes it could be weekly, monthly, based on whatever the person's needs?
Right. The only way to know exactly what they need is to check. So first we do a screening, we do a history, and we gather a couple of simple tests to determine if we even think they're a candidate for care. And then if an examination is appropriate, we use neurodiagnostic equipment to find out what's wrong. We do movement orthopedic testing and X-ray analysis in order to determine exactly how to custom create a plan for them.
Now, as I said before, I think people equate chiropractic care with a bad back or something along those lines. But what other types of illnesses or conditions can a healthy body, chiropractically speaking, help us to avoid? Are there some really serious diseases that maybe this will help give us a fighting chance against?
Chiropractic doesn't treat any specific condition. We can diagnose and refer out for medical problems. However, the goal in chiropractic is primarily to align the spinal column and thereby allow the nerve system to communicate well between the brain and the body. Think of this. An optimal functioning spine allows the ease of expression so that the brain can allow messages to transfer to every cell and synchronize back to the brain. So we're not going to expect cures or miracles all the time, but we're not surprised either when people begin to recover from issues that they didn't even explain they had in the first place.
So someone that's dealing with a chronic illness or some type of a condition, is chiropractic care a solution as a standalone, or does it work best in conjunction with other medical modalities?
Depending on the condition, we work well with all types of other medical doctors. We're referring out to medical doctors. They're referring to us. And predominantly, people are having the best success when co-treatment is possible. So even something seriously medically oriented, the person can often benefit by having an aligned spine while they're going through medical care at the same time.
Before you mentioned mothers coming in and leaving their children home, you are a pediatric specialist. So how relevant is chiropractic care for our children, and when do you recommend, what age do you recommend they begin getting an evaluation?
Well, there are key stages of development where checkups are important. The first one is right at birth. All of the undocumented birth traumas, they are major issues to get looked at right away, because at that point, it's so simple to make corrections. The adjustment for an infant is just a fingertip, almost like you'd be checking a tomato for ripeness. The amount of force that's necessary is negligible, and the ease of correction is simple. The other stages where we would expect checkups to be really valuable are as kids develop, they learn to hold their head up, they learn to sit up, they learn to stand, they learn to walk, and all the while they're experiencing forces on the body which can cause vertebrae to shift. It's not that they have crisis, it's that we have the opportunity to allow them to express their best function, and wouldn't we want that?
Doctor, before we run out of time, can you give us a couple of tips that we could implement to maintain a healthy spinal column and a physical well-being?
Absolutely. First and foremost, posture is the window to the spine. So if we learn what good posture is, and then find ways to maintain it, the way we sit, the way we stand, the way we sleep, those are skills technically that can be taught. And to lengthen the body is a wonderful, wonderful tool. And in our office, we're creating opportunities for people to exercise and get fit in support of their chiropractic correction.
Dr. Michael Magwood can be found at the Pure Balance Center in Clifton, New Jersey. If you'd like more information about him and his facility, you can visit purebalancecenter.com. Dr. Magwood, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Are you frustrated with your diagnosis of irritable bowel syndrome? I'm Dr. Lynn Corrigan, an anti-aging and regenerative medicine physician with the Active Center for Health and Wellness in Hackensack, New Jersey. Irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS, is one of the most common conditions seen by the primary care physician in the United States. IBS has a big impact, ranging from lost days of work to a poor quality of life. What can be done about it? Diet is key. Many people with IBS experiment with their diet and try eliminating offending foods. Consider working with a physician to systematically eliminate foods such as wheat or dairy. Blood tests can be done to look for food allergies and food sensitivities. And soluble fiber, such as psyllium seed, has been shown to be helpful for constipation. Stress makes the symptoms of IBS worse, so stress reduction is important. Exercise reduces stress, so light to moderate exercise is recommended on a regular basis. Probiotics are important. They have been shown to improve the symptoms of IBS and to balance the inflammation present. Peppermint oil is helpful for abdominal spasm and pain. Fennel is very helpful in the treatment and prevention of bloating. Finally, relaxation therapy or stress management training have been shown to reduce symptoms of IBS and to improve the results of standard medical treatment. For more information, call 201-487-4600 or visit us on the web at theactivecenter.com. I'm Dr. Lynn Corrigan.
We all want to live a happy, productive life, but sometimes we need a little help. Our Coach on Call experts provide strategies to help you cultivate effective life skills. Joining me today is Carolyn Curtis, an image consultant and personal brand strategist from First Impression Style. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Carolyn, as we go into the fall season, we're bombarded by magazines touting the latest fall trends. The fashion industry creates this buzz every season with the hopes that we rush out and buy new clothes. So what trends in fashion should really be our main consideration?
Oh, trends are very important to our professional image. But most women, and a lot of my clients, they're not in tune to that, or they get very frustrated in how to take a runway look and make it work for them in real life or work on their body. But by not incorporating, the current looks into your wardrobe, you can also give the impression that your skills and expertise may also not be current, or that you don't care about your professional image. Now, on the other hand, if you wear head-to-toe trends without regards to your lifestyle, age, your work environment, or appropriateness, you can really send the wrong message in a professional or a social situation. My bottom line, you should build your wardrobe with key pieces that first flatter your body type, and then you add the trendier items for polish and personality.
So, Carolyn, what are your practical tips for women on how to make fashion trends work for them?
I have 7 tips, 7 clothing style tips when it comes to building a wardrobe in general and also how to incorporate the trends. First, only embrace those trends that are really true to your personal style. If a trend doesn't make you feel good or as well as look good, then skip it. Second, take into consideration how your clothes fit before everything else. If a trend doesn't work for your body type, don't buy it. Third, start in small doses if you're unsure on how to pull off a trend. Accessories are the easiest and the practical and, quite frankly, the most cost-effective way to incorporate the current trends. Now, a few trendy colors for this season, which are great to incorporate into almost anybody's wardrobe, are the shades of purple, plum, burgundy, and red. Now, the color of the year is emerald green, so that's an easy way to incorporate some trendy items into your wardrobe. Now, if these colors, for example, don't look good on you, then try a necklace or a bracelet, shoes, or a handbag instead. My 4th tip, balance your overall look. The key to incorporating them is to look fresh and modern without going overboard. A little can go a long way. When you think of your outfit, think of it as 75%, your wardrobe basics, and 25% of the on-trend pieces. Number 5, do educate yourself before you go shopping. A lot of women, they say, well, I'll just go to the mall. They don't have a plan. And that's really just a fashion don't waiting to happen. Number 6, clean out those items out of your closet that are no longer in style. Now, fashions have a way of coming back in style, but they never come back exactly the same way. And lastly, number 7, getting dressed is supposed to be fun. It's a way to express who you are and how you want others to perceive you. Now, if you're in a style rut, a new trend can be fun. It's a great way to break out of that rut or to reinvent your image. And it can be as simple as buying maybe a new pair of shoes or even a new lipstick color.
Carolyn, thank you so much for sharing these wonderful tips to help us make a great first impression. If our listeners would like more information about Carolyn Curtis, you can visit her website, firstimpressionstyle.com. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the show informative. At Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, we believe that knowledge is power. Take what you've learned, apply it, and live your best life now. Remember that this information is for educational purposes only and should never replace the advice of a professional who knows your personal situation. If you'd like more information, you can visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on the site, listen to past shows on demand, read the digital magazine, take part in the book club, sign up for the mailing list, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Until next time, this is Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.